Welcome back to the table, friends. I'm your humble host, Grey DMs, and with me, as always, is Owen.
I'm Owen.
Today, have you ever wondered where are all the slimes in D&D these days?
Where are all the slimes?
Yeah, like where's all the cute slimes that say,
I get like the level 1 or level 0 monster.
Cute little slimes, or like, where are all the weird kind of like shield classes?
Where they only have a shield?
Yeah. Or you might be kind of distilling that all into the understanding of the Japanese have a really different view of RPGs than we do.
Yes, they do.
So if you've ever been wondering how that happened, that's what we're going to kind of talk about today, and how you could get a little bit of JRPG sprinkled into your tabletop experience.
Man, can I?
Yeah.
Can I get some isekai mixed in there too?
I think that's the goal for everybody.
Okay.
Because there are plenty. Google knows exactly what you're saying if you start typing in isekai like TTRPG. Oh boy.
Please. Great.
All of you out there who wish that you too had a dedicated wolf, hybrid waifu chasing you around, or you could get by camping food and cooking food out in the outdoors.
Or if you want to be a vending machine.
Yeah, or just a vending machine, myriad of options. So, tabletop role-playing games have cultivated diverse forms across the globe, with Japanese tabletop role-playing games, we're going to call them TTJ RPGs, representing a particular unique and influential branch. Emerging in the 1980s, these games often referred to in Japan as Table Talk RPGs, or Taberu Taku RPG.
I was going to say, that's not what you called it last time.
That is officially what they call it. Or simply TRPGs, which is also equally as baffling, developed a distinct identity. This specific terminology serves to differentiate them from already popular role-playing video games, JRPGs, prevalent in Japan, highlighting an early recognition of the evolving RPG landscape. The genesis of TTJ RPGs is a fascinating narrative of culture, adaptation, innovation, and a symbolic relationship with other media. While initially a niche hobby, a series of pivotal developments allowed TTJ RPGs to carve out a significant space in Japanese gaming and entertainment landscape. So, let's go back to the 1970s. Tabletop role-playing games garnered little to no attention in Japan, primarily because they were exclusively available with English titles. This linguistic barrier posed a substantial impediment to the early adoption by a broader Japanese audience. However, the early 1980s marked a crucial turning point. Gaming magazines and computer publications began actively introducing role-playing games, acting as vital conduits for initial exposure and sparking nascent interest with the Japanese gaming community. Early Japanese-developed RPGs often explored science fiction themes, demonstrating an immediate diversification beyond the traditional fantasy settings prevalent in Western TTRPGs. Notable examples include Donkey Commando.
What?
1982. And Enterprise, role-play game in Star Trek, 1983. The first translated Western TTRPG to reach Japan was Traveler in 1984, swiftly followed by the iconic Dungeons & Dragons, which was the Red Box edition in 1985.
I was going to say, 1990, what?
D&D achieved remarkable commercial success, selling an impressive 100,000 copies in its inaugural year and reaching 200,000 copies by 1991. This rapid and enthusiastic reception of D&D suggests a significant latent interest in the genre, which only awaited improved accessibility and cultural integration. The burgeoning popularity of computer RPGs further paved the way for tabletop counterparts. Imported PC games like Wizardry and Ultima in the early 1980s, alongside domestically produced titles such as Hadilde, Dragon Slayer, and Black Onyx, cultivated a foundational understanding and appetite for the D&D style adventure and fantasy worlds within Japan. Amidst these growing interests, Roads to Lord, published in 1984, emerged as one of the earliest Japanese-designed traditional fantasy RPGs, signaling the nascent efforts of an indigenous game design. The widespread success of role-playing video games such as Dragon's Quest and Final Fantasy in the late 1980s acted as a powerful accelerant, further popularizing tabletop role-playing games in Japan. This cross-pollination of media was instrumental in expanding the TTRPG audience. A pivotal innovation, however, was pioneered by the Japanese game publisher group SNE, the replay genre. Replays are meticulously detailed logs of TRPG play sessions arranged for publication in a style akin to light novels. This format ingeniously transformed private gameplay into a publicly consumable narrative, allowing a broader audience to experience the hobby vicariously. Yeah, take that, Critical Role. But seriously, the first and arguably most influential roleplay, or replay, Record of Lotus War, was based on a Dungeons & Dragons session, began circularization in Comptique magazine in 1986. Its immense popularity significantly increased interest in the fantasy genre and the TTRPG hobby itself. The novelized series alone sold over 10 million copies.
What? This is 1980 what?
1986.
Wow.
Underscoring its profound cultural penetration. This immense success demonstrated that a narrative, observational format was highly accessible and appealing to the Japanese audience, effectively showcasing the fun and narrative potential of TTRPGs and creating demand for culturally resonant games. The replay culture preceding Western's actual play phenomena like Critical Role highlights a fundamental difference in how TTRPGs were consumed and disseminated in Japan, pointing to a cultural appreciation for storytelling as performance or literature, where the story generated by play is as important as direct player agency. I gotta ask you, in 1986, if you sold a manuscript that was basically created from your D&D game for 10 million copies, would your publisher not immediately be paying everyone to play D&D?
No shit.
Like, everybody go home and play this. Every single one of you, grab your kids and your neighborhood like friends and start playing this. And one of you's got to have some good idea.
Well, you also have to look at, though, so like, this whole thing is basically about the cultural differences between the U.S. and Japan. Look at what the U.S. was going through at that particular period in time as well. And it's just like, no, they had a lot of cultural issues going on that would just make this a non-viable thing. And on top of that, you probably had publishers and stuff. This is like, they sold 10 million in Japan. That'll never work.
It'll never work. See Critical Role 30 years later.
Yeah.
So capitalizing on this success, Group SNE formed a commercial entity and initially published a TTRPG based on the Wizardry video game series, proving the viability of a Japanese TTRPG market. This demonstrated a clear foundational causal link between the success of video games and the growth of the tabletop market. The intertwining of tabletop and video game RPGs created a unique synergistic evolution that distinguished the Japanese gaming landscape from its Western counterparts. Sword World RPG, a seminal Japanese fantasy TTRPG, was published in 1989 and quickly became popular. It was a hybrid system, blending elements from D&D, RuneQuest, and Middle-earth fantasy role-playing, and was set in Forcelia, the world established by Record Lotus War replays. A notable design choice was its exclusive use of six-sided dice, a practical adaptation due to the scarcity of other polyhedral dice in 1989, particularly in rural Japan. This constraint forced mechanical innovations rather than direct emulation of Western systems, contributing to a unique mechanical identity for the Sword World RPG. Its inexpensive and portable paperback rules further enhanced accessibility. To cater to the large fan base of the original Comptique series, Group SNE released a simplified version of Record Lotus War Companion, which included D&D to Sword World conversions, effectively bridging the gap for fans already familiar with the Lotus War narrative, but new to TTRPG mechanics. Isn't that kind of crazy?
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, you guys already love this, and we acknowledge that you love it, but hey, what if you could play it in a new setting based on these rules, and you're going to like this new setting because it's our stuff? I don't know.
I mean, I kind of feel every country does that.
A little bit.
It's like, look at The Office.
Very much so. The late 1990s and the early 2000s saw the continued growth of the TTJ RPG scene. Notable titles from this period included Blade of the Arcana, Night Wizard, and Alshard. The establishment of Roll and Roll magazine in 2003 further solidified the hobby's presence and provided a dedicated platform for discussion and new releases. The influence of TTJ RPGs and other media became increasingly apparent when Night Wizard was adapted into an anime television series in 2007. Alshard's game was expanded into the generic Standard RPG system, the SRS, in 2006, indicating a move towards more modular and adaptability design principles within the industry. Since the late 2000s, the popularity of RPG fan replay videos on platforms like Nico Nico and the rise of web novels have significantly influenced the Japanese fantasy and RPG scene, leading to the release of games like Log Horizon TRPG in 2014. This resurgence demonstrates the enduring appeal of the replay format, adapting a new digital context and continuing to serve as a bridge between TTRPGs and other forms of Japanese media. Despite a relatively small market size, domestically made role-playing games are highly competitive in Japan with a substantial number of original products published. So from 2000 to 2007, 94 rulebooks were published. This indicates a robust and self-sustaining design community and continually produces new and unique content. The increasing global interest in TTJ RPGs is evidenced by the transition of titles like The Maid RPG and Double Cross into English, and Ryutama into French. This outward expansion signifies a growing appreciation for the design philosophies and narrative approaches that characterize Western Japanese tabletop role-playing games on an international scale. The evolution of TTJ RPGs has led to a distinctive set of design philosophies, narrative tropes, and mechanical approaches that differentiate them significantly from Western TTRPGs like Dungeons & Dragons. These divergences are often rooted in deep-seated cultural values and the unique media landscape of Japan. This is where it gets kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So TTJ RPGs tend to prioritize character-driven narratives, stylized art, and a highly structured approach to storytelling. Gameplay often guides players through a series of predetermined locations with a strong emphasis on the art of storytelling. This approach frequently employs well-known tropes and focuses on creating compelling characters with complex relationships and unique inner struggles, which inherently leads to less freedom for players to define their protagonist's core identity or significantly impact major plot points. Games like Tenra Bansho Zero exemplify this, focusing on role-playing and character drama with a kabuki theater-style play structure that explicitly uses acts, scenes, and intermissions to frame the narrative. The explicit aim for a cinematic experience, utilizing tools like trailers for scenarios and master scenes, basically scenes without player characters, suggests the design philosophy that prioritizes a polished, pre-envisioned story over purely emergent gameplay. The acceptance and even embrace of railroading as a legitimate design feature in TTJ RPGs rather than a GMing flaw indicates a cultural preference for experiencing a well-crafted, emotionally resonant story over having absolute, unconstrained freedom. This preference likely stems from the widespread popularity of highly structured narratives in Japanese media such as anime and JRPGs, where players are accustomed to tagging along for the story. In contrast, Western TTRPGs traditionally emphasize player agency, open-world freedom, and moral complexity. Their design philosophy often centers around empowering players to define their own hero through choices that have meaningful consequences, and they strive for replayability by constructing original stories that can lead to different endings. Western RPGs typically avoid heavy exposition, preferring the players discover the unique worlds through limitless exploration. The underlying principle is that RPGs are about the players making the best choices and dealing with the consequences, rather than the game master presenting an already completed story. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And it kind of makes sense, too, because if you think of, like, if a person is trying to emulate an anime story, like an isekai or something, so much of that is not about the protagonist.
No.
It's about the world looking for a hero to challenge the Dark Lord.
Right. right?
The Demon King, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the player fits the protagonist's role and serves its plot and like goes forward. But like that's also kind of counter to Western ideals where a group of ragtag people become the thing that saves the universe.
Right.
And that's because they choose the things to kind of go up. So I think that's kind of it's interesting to hear a completely flip in the philosophy of like enforced railroading.
Right. And it's just really strange to listen to you talk about this and just realize like what Westerners and, Easterners want out of a game is just so different.
Well, it's tied to the very like the core of the difference between, well, not the difference, but one of the many differences between a lot of Eastern countries and societies where they're very, exocentric.
Yeah.
So like they're taught from a very early age through schooling and through basically all the kind of the rituals of life, the cultural touchstones of life that your job is to basically be a productive member of society and that society's growth is paramount. Like, you shouldn't act out or you shouldn't cause problems because that would disrupt society. And the Western kind of prevailing, sense is that individual freedom is paramount to anything and that society should never hold you back. So especially in something that's a niche derivative like this, which is talking about a fantasy character, like, people often kind of balk at, sitting down to the table and the GM basically giving them this like, oh, the ancient evil, you're the chosen one kind of stuff. Cause they're like, well, I want to do my own thing and I want
to. Yeah. I mean, that's cool, but like, I want to go take over my uncle's farm. And
like, I'm really much more invested in this concept of exploiting the inventory system to become the kings of the salt universe here. And like, and you're like, and it's a culture thing, but yet we also consume West or Eastern media.
Yeah.
So there is always that thing where you sit at the table and, we kind of usually characterize it as like, the dude tips his fedora and like says like, oh, I have this great plan about, the Dark Lord has come once again and you must rise to defeat him. And you're like,
Milady.
Right. So let's see if we can kind of break it into some specific examples of divergence. So the distinct design philosophies of TTJ RPGs manifest a unique set of narrative tropes that often differ significantly from those found in Western TTRPGs. So, I'm going to ask you if you can kind of think of an example of any of these, even if it's really hard. Maybe let's see if this is really hard to figure out. Collectivism and bonds. A prevalent theme in TTJ RPGs is the hero's journey involving growth in a communal spirit.
The power of friendship.
Like the more we get to this, you're like, this is every anime I've ever heard of. The protection of bond. Did you watch the Red Ranger gets isekai'd?
No, I never did watch that one.
Oh, because literally his power is the spirit of bonds. Because it's a play on the sponsor, which is like a Band-Aid company. Yeah, but it's like the spirit of bonds. The protection of bonds and the reliance of others as a source of strength. This directly reflects the collectivist nature of Japanese society, where group harmony and the collective good are prioritized over individual ambition. This is not just a narrative element, but is explicitly translated into game mechanics, as exemplified by games like Chrono Trigger's powerful collaborative attacks. This indicates that TTJ RPGs are inherently more likely to feature mechanics that actively reward group synergy, shared resources, and collective achievement rather than solely individual heroics or personal optimization.
That makes sense.
Yeah. That was one of the things I was thinking of for our exploration in game design was this concept of combo attacks. And I'm like, well, why don't you see them that often in, and it's because it's something that specifically enforces group bonding. Like the group has to set up, even in development of your character. You're like, I have to set up a thing to set up his good attack.
Got to do the fastball special.
Exactly. Predetermined protagonist and linear progression. TTJ RPGs.
You are the chosen one.
Dead on. TTJ RPGs often feature protagonists with a predefined appearance and personality or a bland protagonist
yes,
onto whom the player projects their own interpretation. The character's role in overarching narrative is frequently fixed, with stories typically being linear and offering less player freedom to drastically alter the plot. This one hit me hard when I went back to thinking that 2 of my favorite JRPGs literally have a character who constantly tries to run away from the plot. And I was like, man, you're right. There's literally a whole chapter in Xenogears where Faye's like, I don't want to be part of this anymore. And he leaves.
Yes.
Him and Ellie just leave. And then it takes the one of the antagonists to hunt him down and beat him out of spite before he comes back and joins the rest of the party. Like, this is...
What's the other one?
It's 7, Final Fantasy 7.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like, Cloud's constantly, it's not my problem.
Yeah,
He's always standoffish. Like, the new game had to invent a whole lot more of his personality. This is pretty funny. So, next trope, youthful heroes and specific archetypes. A frequently observed trope is the whiny prepubescent male with goofy hair as the central hero. Other common character archetypes include the brooder, the perky one, the demure female, the child often with unexplained combat prowess.
Oh, we're watching one of those right now.
And the old person whose age is primarily narrative, not mechanical. The hometown destruction trope serves as a common, often tragic catalyst for protagonist adventure, forcing them to leave their familiar surroundings. That's pretty funny too. I think there's a hilarious conversation between the main like JRPG protagonist and like the D&D rogue, where the D&D rogue's like, man, sucks that being a rogue means your parents have to die. And the JRPG protagonist is just like, pew, look at what happened to my villain. Nuked off the map. Yeah, once again, Final Fantasy VII Xenogears.
Yep.
Both of them, the town gets completely wiped out.
Yep.
Jeez, man, distracted. Technology as calamity.
That's very common.
Yeah, a reoccurring narrative device is the world shaped by a past calamity caused by the overuse of technology. This happens when you get bombed, leading to a general Luddite society. This is starkly contrasted with a technologically advanced evil empire that serves as the primary antagonist. Okay, we don't need to go into why that exists. Replay culture and cinematic structure. The enduring popularity of replays signifies a strong cultural preference for observing or experiencing a story as it unfolds, much like watching an anime or reading a light novel. This cultural inclination directly influences the scene system in TTJ RPGs, which explicitly aims for a cinematic feel, employing GM tools such as trailers for scenarios and master scenes without player characters to provide context and guide the narrative's progression. So for contrast, Western TTRPG tropes, which we could spend hours on, individualism and moral choice. The hero's journey in Western TTRPGs often emphasizes personal morality and the burden of individual choices that no one can absolve them of. This aligns with Western culture values of individualism, player-driven worlds, and customization. Western TTRPGs typically prioritize extensive player choice and character creation, allowing for deep customization of appearance, personality, and abilities. They also favor open world exploration, where players largely dictate their path and objectives. Focus on builds and numbers. Western RPGs tend to place a greater emphasis on numerical optimization and character builds, offering more horizontal choices for character progression that significantly alter gameplay style. We'll go back and touch on that because that may sound a little weird right now. I think we're actually about to touch it right now. The philosophical and narrative distinctions between TTJ RPGs and Western TTRPGs are deeply embedded in their mechanical design as well. So TTJ RPGs, character progression tends to be extremely tall vertically, meaning damage values and power levels that can scale to hundreds or thousands of times their initial values by endgame.
Are atomic.
Progression is often linear, with skills typically unlocked by grinding levels, and character builds are less about making conscious branching decisions and more about a straightforward numbers go up trajectory. Character classes are often rigid, serving to reinforce predefined character development paths. I mean, yeah, like think of like Final Fantasy X, where like literally you had to go unlock the ability to get a 6th digit, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then, yeah. Western TTRPGs, character progression is typically more horizontal, offering diverse choices for character builds that lead to varied play styles rather than increasing numerical power. New skills often dramatically change gameplay, and core stats are generally lower but more impactful, with players having significant control over their allocation. It's got like 5th edition all over it, but I mean, also just thinking back to like 3.5 and some of the stuff in there where, yeah, you had to keep up with the curve, but like you were always trying to get some touchstone that like your class mechanically would change to.
Right.
And in kind of JRPGs, that's usually kind of baked into it day one. Combat resolution. TTJ RPGs commonly feature turn-based combat systems, often described as console RPG-like. Damage calculations can be mathematically complex, incorporating floating point multipliers and quadratic/logarithmic scaling, which would be impractical for manual tabletop calculations,
Yes,
but are standard in video games. Unique combat mechanics, including proximity bonuses, base attack, elemental and weapon-based weaknesses, and character-specific attack styles, while present combat games like Ryutama are not central-focused, instead emphasizing travel and companionship. Western TTRPGs more frequently employed real-time combat systems or lean towards more simulationist approaches. Combat mechanics often derive directly from tabletop dice-rolling traditions, typically featuring less complex mathematical formulas, as complex calculations are often avoided to prevent the game from becoming a math problem. So GM role and player agency and the scene system. So TTJ RPGs, the scene system that is defined mechanical structure in many TTJ RPGs, organizing scenarios into distinct phases: introductory, middle/research, climax, and epilogue, with each phase comprising multiple scenes. Forced engagement. A core rule often dictates that every player must make at least one skill/ability check in every scene, ensuring active participation and preventing passive observation.
You can't just watch, you gotta play.
Explicit spotlight management. In its strongest manifestation, the scene system dictates that each character receives their own dedicated scene, with players taking turns as the scene player and protagonist of that moment. This contrasts with Western TTRPGs, where the narrative spotlight tends to shift more organically. Cinematic pacing. The system's explicit goal is to be cinematic, with GMs employing tools such as trailers and master scenes to provide narrative context and guide the story's progression. This approach can lead to perceived railroading of the narrative, which is often embraced as a design feature rather than a flaw. GM as facilitator/director. The GM's role is often framed as a facilitator or director who introduces scenes and plot points, but players are actively involved in narrating the outcomes of their die rolls, contributing directly to the unfolding story. In some systems, such as Nobi RPG, the traditional GM role is entirely absent, with players taking turns guiding scenes. The GM's function can be less about being a secret keeper and more about curating the narrative experience. Contrasted with Western TTRPGs, which emphasize robust player agency, where players are expected to make meaningful choices that directly influence the story's outcome. Rules are generally considered invaluable for all participants, and players expect transparency regarding how their actions will be resolved and clear player-authored goals. The GM's primary role is often that of a secret keeper, an impartial referee controlling the flow of information.
I kind of like that.
Yeah. Cultural aesthetics and mechanics. So games like Tenra Bansho Zero integrate a karma system where accumulating too much karma can lead a character's transformation into an Ashura, an obsessive monster, at which point the GM assumes control of the character. This mechanically directly embodies Buddhist philosophical concepts of attachment and suffering it can cause. And also, like, Vampire kind of has that too.
Yeah, yep.
Mono no aware, awareness of impermanence, transient sadness.
Okay.
This profound Japanese aesthetic, central to Japanese culture and Buddhism, emphasizes the awareness of the impermanence of things and a gentle sadness at their passing. While not always explicitly detailed in TTRPG mechanics, the transformative nature of the karma system in Tenra Bansho Zero or Ryutama focuses on the journey itself, and its ephemeral moments can be interpreted as reflecting this concept. Wabi-sabi, beauty in imperfection. This aesthetic embraces transience and imperfection as sources of beauty. While direct TTRPG examples are not explicitly provided in the available information, the idea of leaving mistakes in games that paradoxically makes them better, or games with a rough in look and feel, austere in mood and structure in video games, could inspire similar design principles in tabletop, rewarding flawed characters or embracing unpredictable outcomes. And Giri Ninjo, or duty or obligation versus emotion. This fundamental cultural concept where social duty or obligation often conflicts with personal emotion presents a rich thematic space for mechanical representation. Such mechanics could force players to make difficult choices that balance personal desires with group or societal expectations. All right. So that was
a lot.
Well, let's back up a little bit and let's talk more about like some of the interesting things we did talk about, like Record of Lodoss War. This is pretty interesting. So Record of Lodoss War originated as a D&D replay, as we said, and it became an enormously popular series, effectively sparking widespread interest in the fantasy genre across Japan. Its novelized series alone achieved sales exceeding 10 million copies, demonstrating its profound cultural penetration. This cultural phenomenon was a monumental moment, as the Record of Lodoss War articles directly inspired game developer Hironobu Sakaguchi to create Final Fantasy, a series whose subsequent success radically changed both the fantasy genre overall and especially how role players structured campaigns in both Japan and West.
That's crazy.
Sword World RPG, published in 1989 and set in the same Forcellia world established by Record Lodoss War, quickly rose to prominence. It featured a flexible multi-class system and notably utilized only 6-sided die, as we said why. Sword World was widely regarded as a cultural cornerstone in Japan, fundamentally shaping RPGs and how they're perceived and played within the country. The published articles of Sword World sessions were instrumental in keeping the roleplay format alive as a distinct literary genre, demonstrating the power of shared narrative experiences. The influence extended to direct media adaptations such as Rune Soldier, which is a novel and anime series based on the Sword World RPG setting, and official game adaptations including Sword World PC, Sword World SFC and SFC2, and Sword World 2.0 for the Nintendo DS. Here's kind of a random one, but I think we brought this up before. Surprisingly, Call of Cthulhu, a Western sci-fi horror TTRPG, is a significant player in the TTRPG industry in Japan, reportedly selling more copies there than everywhere else in the world combined.
Really? Yeah, I did not come across that.
This represents a significant outlier in the TTJ RPG landscape, demonstrating Japan's capacity for cultural reinterpretation and adaptation. Its unexpected popularity was significantly influenced by anime and further amplified by the pervasive replay culture, which transformed game sessions into consumable narratives. Now, Japanese interpretations of Call of Cthulhu often feature highly diverse and anachronistic party compositions, such as a hardened investigator group with a magical girl and a robot man.
Hard-boiled.
This reflects a unique approach to the genre, blending common in Japanese media, where disparate elements are often combined to create novel experiences. Furthermore, the game manuals are notably printed in manga format, a deliberate choice to make them fit seamlessly into Japanese libraries.
That's smart.
Yeah. So we mentioned this a couple times, but Tenra Bansho Zero, or TBZ, is characterized by its hyper-Asian setting, a unique blend of magic and technology featuring samurai, Taoist sorcery, mecha, and geisha.
This is hyper-Asian.
This fusion of elements create a distinct high-energy aesthetic that resonates with popular anime and manga. A core mechanical innovation is the karma system, where accumulating 108 karma points triggers a character's transformation into an asura, with the GM assuming control of the character. The mechanically directly embodies the Buddhist philosophy related to attachment. The game places a strong emphasis on role-playing and character drama, utilizing a kabuki theater-style play. We already talked about that. The theatrical reinforces the narrative focus and cinematic pacing. Ryutama is known as a natural fantasy RPG that cultivates a feel-good, or honobono, which is heartwarming, atmosphere, drawing direct comparisons to the animation style and thematic depths of the Hayao Miyazaki films. This game explicitly prioritizes travel, exploration, community, friendship, harmony, and personal growth over traditional combat encounters. This represents a significant aesthetic and thematic divergence from often grim or high-stakes fantasy prevalent in Western TTRPGs. The game broadens the definition of what constitutes an adventure in a TTRPG, moving beyond traditional combat-centric narratives and offering a different kind of player satisfaction rooted in introspection, camaraderie, and the appreciation for the mundane. Characters in Ryutama are often NPCs like bakers, farmers, merchants, emphasizing relatability, everyday adventures, and the journey itself as a core experience. Experience is primarily gained by undertaking difficult journeys to new places, not through monster slaying, directly reinforcing the game's core theme of travel as a primary driver of character progression. A unique mechanical element is the Ryujin, or dragon person GM character, who acts as an in-game observer and guide for the players, providing limited support and shaping the world. Its themes and aesthetics are heavily influenced by travel anime like Spice and Wolf, and slice of anime like Eurocamp, further cementing its connection to broader Japanese media. And of course, some other notable TTRPGs, Maid RPG in 2008. This is a distinctive competitive RPG where player characters are maids vying for the master's attention.
God.
It results random character creation and a favor mechanic. It was part of a movement to create decolonialized TTRPGs connected to unique Japanese aesthetics. Isn't that interesting?
That's interesting, yes.
I love that their whole thing was like, we need to step back from these colonialized.
And make a maid cafe.
It's a maid cafe. Yes, okay. Double Cross. The game introduced an encroachment rate system, a mechanical representation of a virus gradually taking over a character. This rate increases not only with power usage, but also simply by appearing in a scene, creating a constant tension between power and corruption. And of course, Fabula Ultima, which came out in 2022. A more recent TTJ RPG explicitly designed to evoke the feel of Japanese-style console RPGs, winning significant awards in 2023. It encourages collaborative world creation and features a Fabula points system, allowing players to reroll failed checks or introduce new story elements by drawing upon their character's theme, identity, or origin. Or, of course, bonds, because bonds powers.
Yes.
The power of bonds.
Buy bond band-aids.
So one of the interesting things about TTJ RPGs is the influence and the connection between them and JRPG video games. So Western TTRPGs, like, people often sell the license to make a game, but in Japan, there's kind of a feedback cycle, which is a little interesting. The relationship between TTJ RPGs, JRPG video games, and anime is deeply intertwined, characterized by a continuous exchange of ideas, mechanics, and narrative structures. This iterative and recursive nature of JRPG design across media means that TTJ RPGs are not merely the pen and paper antecedents for JRPGs, but are actively influenced by and mimic the mechanics of and aesthetics of the digital games they initially inspired. This creates a distinct mechanical flavor for TTJ RPGs that sets them apart from many Western TTRPGs, which often strive to be simpler and more abstract mechanics. This constant feedback loop ensures a continuous evolution in stylistic coherency across Japanese RPG media. The influence of TTJ RPGs on JRPG video games is profound, tracing back to the very origins of the genre. Obviously, the record of Lotus War articles, which meticulously detailed a D&D campaign, served as a direct inspiration for the game developer Hironobu Sakaguchi to create Final Fantasy. This was a monumental moment as Final Fantasy's subsequent success radically changed both the Western fantasy genre overall and especially how role players structured campaigns in both Japan and the West. Early Final Fantasy games openly borrowed heavily from traditional JRPG or RPG elements. The typical party composition, rogue, fighter, cleric, and wizard, directly mirrored D&D archetypes, and the Vancian magic system, requiring spells to be prepared in advance for a limited number of uses per day, was directly adapted from D&D. Final Fantasy II's distinctive system in improving skills through repeated practice rather than leveling up allocations was influenced by non-D&D TTRPGs like RuneQuest. Specific D&D monsters such as mimics, mind flayers, and Despacer Beast reimagined as Corials. You remember those? Basically, it's teleporting cats, and they're throughout the fantasy series, but they're basically Despacer Beasts. Made direct appearances in early Final Fantasy titles. Similarly, Dragon Quest, another foundational JRPG, also drew heavily from D&D with its iconic slime monster, tracing its lineage back to D&D's gelatinous cubes and other amorphous dungeon threats. Ramiru, you are thanked. Isn't that kind of crazy?
Yeah.
Many common JRPG narrative tropes are either direct derivations or from or strongly reinforced by TTJ RPG narrative patterns. These include the whiny prepubescent male hero with goofy hair, the hometown destruction as a motivational catalyst, and the reoccurring persistent mini-boss who eventually undergoes a change of heart and turns good, often referred to as the Green Ranger rule or the Vegeta rule.
That makes sense.
The overarching emphasis on character-driven narrative, stylized visual art, and structured storytelling in JRPGs aligns seamlessly with the narrative first design philosophy prevalent in TTJ RPGs. The distinctive and often emotional battle music found in JRPGs reflects a broader Japanese cultural inclination towards emphasizing emotional delivery and atmosphere in storytelling. The strong thematic focus on collectivism and the power of bonds as a source of strength and motivation is a direct reflection of the deep-seated Japanese cultural values, where group harmony and collective effort are prioritized. Let's see. Finally, the replay format, innovated and popularized by Group SNE in 1980s, established a foundational template for the actual play media, a phenomenon that would later gain significant popularity in Western TTRPG communities. This unique Japanese culture of consuming TTRPG sessions as narrative entertainment fostered a storytelling tradition where the story, generated by the game session itself, became a valuable and marketable product.
It's so strange.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it over here, it's just like, yeah, I'd love to watch Critical Role or, Dimension 20 or something like that. But it's just like, yeah, because those are all really good actors and really good role players. Do we really want to watch or listen to or read Bob's game?
That's the point. You just hit on not even watch or listen to.
Yeah, you read. Yeah.
Read the text from that game. That's what's crazy about it. But the influence of these replay culture is clearly discernible in modern Japanese media franchises such as Goblin Slayer and Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls Met in a Dungeon? It's kind of crazy. That is where because they're not isekai. They take place in a fantasy world.
Yeah.
But they clearly like Goblin Slayer has the perfect example of a blank protagonist, his scarring is his only really character trait.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought this whole topic was super interesting to me, is that there were very few examples of something so culturally created. I mean, TTRPGs come from a wide group of underlying hobbies that have distilled into something. So, I mean, it's not just collective storytelling, but in the concept of when D&D eventually got localized and Traveler got first localized in Japan, the concept that it sold across Japan like crazy because they had this spark of wanting to play that type of fantasy, even though they have their own versions of fantasy worlds.
Right.
But this Western fantasy ideal was so narratively, and now that we're 30 years later and we see it kind of distilled by isekai into Starter Town.
Yeah.
A lot of
the Adventurers Guild.
Yeah. All these tropes that kind of have showed up, and maids and butlers and the Demon Lord and all this other stuff like that. And it all kind of came from, groups of people playing these RPGs and then putting their social kind of norms, their social opinions into them, thus birthing this kind of concept.
I could just imagine a bunch of, Japanese folks getting ready to play, and then they have this conversation. Did you know when Westerners play this, they meet up in a tavern?
The tavern? You got to go to the Adventurers Guild.
Everybody knows you meet up at the Adventurers Guild.
A lot of Adventurers Guilds have taverns in East Sky.
Yeah.
But it's
the Adventurers Guild. Its focus is the Adventurers Guild, where the tavern is a tavern.
I think just the creation of a class called the Shield Hero.
Yeah, that's the thing that blows my mind.
Never happen in Western.
Yeah, I mean they're not prolific in Japanese anime and stuff like that, but there are a lot of them where it's just like, I'm the guy that just has a shield, and it's like you see the version, it's just like, I guess I really gotta hunker down, and he grabs another shield.
Like there's this season, what was it? I got scooped up by an S-rank party or whatever.
Yeah.
And the guy has enhancement magic. He's like a white mage.
Yep.
Like out of nowhere, one of the very vocal female knight characters had to fight to defend like the village, and she picks up only a shield.
Yes.
And I was like, another shield hero.
Yeah, I watched that one, and like they had a line of guys with shields. Just shields.
I'm like, guys, historical Roman centurions. Giant shield Gladius. Why are you not using your second hand?
Yes.
So they're like, no. So much so that the shield hero cannot wield a weapon.
Right.
Like, what is that? It's such a weird. Yeah, I guess I love when a culture, not a subculture, a culture develops their flavor of something so much that it becomes a subculture within the genre itself. And like I said, that the whole point and the whole thing that kicked this off was that Fabula Ultima or whatever, and like the introduction to the sword world. And sword world it's a hoot.
Yeah, I get it. We have to play it sometime.
It's a pretty crazy thing, and someday I cannot wait to be the protagonist who uses the power of bonds to shine the light that will kill the demon king.
So okay, the big bad evil guy, he's got you on the ropes. He's, his sword, you're blocking, but you're barely holding back. Like, what do you want to do? I want to yell. Okay, roll to yell. That's a 20. All right.
Power up.
Powering up.
I gotta believe in the heart of the hero. And then subsequently, next campaign, I have to come back as a broody anti-hero. Because now I've seen too much to maintain my purity.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We're gonna see you guys later.
Bye-bye.